When Jack discovers his wife Claire's secret affair after 8 years of marriage, his world crumbles. Instead of confronting her, he meticulously crafts a plan to strip her of everything she betrayed him for, the house, the money, even her future. Fueled by anger and betrayal, Jack manipulates the situation to deliver the ultimate revenge. But as his calculated moves unravel Claire's life, Jack learns that vengeance comes at a devastating price. In the end, his triumph takes a dark and tragic turn, leaving him questioning whether revenge was worth losing everything, including himself. I never thought I'd be the guy to snoop on his wife. 8 years of marriage, and I had always believed in trust, blind, stupid trust. Claire had been my world. She was the quirky, artistic dreamer I fell for in college, the kind of woman who could make a rainy day feel like sunshine. We were opposites in many ways. I was the practical one, the planner, the guy who thrived on structure and hard work. Claire, on the other hand, was chaos wrapped in charm. I loved that about her, or at least, I used to. Until the little things started to chip away at my perfect image of her. It started so subtly, I almost missed it. Random late-night work meetings that didn't line up with her usual schedule. Laughter at text messages that were quickly hidden when I walked into the room. Unfamiliar charges on the credit card, hotel bars, expensive wine, lingerie I had never seen her wear. I tried to reason it away. Claire was an artist, after all. She saw the world differently. Maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then, one Friday night, the doubt became impossible to ignore. She came home late, smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize. It wasn't hers, and it definitely wasn't mine. Her excuse was paper thin. Something about meeting an old friend from her college art program. She claimed it was spontaneous, and that they'd just grabbed a quick drink. When I asked for details, what friend, where they met, why she didn't text me, her answers were vague, her tone defensive. That gut feeling hit me like a freight train, the one you can't shake no matter how much you try to convince yourself it's all in your head. The next day, I made my first real mistake. I asked her directly if something was going on. Not in an angry way, but softly, like I was trying to coax the truth out of her. I said, "Claire, I feel like we've been disconnected lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" Her reaction was textbook. First, she looked offended. "How could you even say that?" she snapped, her voice high and sharp. Then came the counterattack, "If anyone's been distant, it's you. You're always working, always stressed. When was the last time you even looked at me the way you used to?" It caught me off guard. For a moment, I actually felt guilty. Was I working too much? Had I neglected her? It was enough to shut me up, for the moment, at least. But the feeling in my gut didn't go away. That night, she fell asleep on the couch, her phone clutched in her hand. I sat in the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But my mind kept circling back to the little inconsistencies, the moments that didn't add up. And then, as if on autopilot, I got up and walked back to the living room. Her phone was on the coffee table, unlocked. She always kept it password protected, but tonight, for whatever reason, she hadn't bothered. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked it up. This was a line I never thought I'd cross, but something inside me was screaming that I needed to know the truth. The first thing I saw was a text thread with someone named Ryan. I didn't recognize the name, but the messages made my stomach churn. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're amazing. I miss you already. When can we meet again?" I scrolled up, my hands shaking. The conversation went back weeks. There were photos, nothing explicit, but suggestive enough to make me feel like the floor had just fallen out from under me. The timestamps told me everything I needed to know. While I was working late to meet deadlines, she was sneaking around with this guy. Hotels, bars, even our own damn car. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. And then, I saw it. A message from her to him. Don't worry, he's clueless. He's too busy with his spreadsheets to notice anything. I stared at the words, my vision blurring with rage and disbelief. I had sacrificed so much for this woman. I had worked my ass off to give her the life she wanted, a beautiful home, financial security, the freedom to pursue her art without worrying about money. And this was how she repaid me. By calling me boring and running off with some loser named Ryan. I wanted to wake her up right then and there, shove the phone in her face, and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the look of peace on her face as she slept, like she didn't have a care in the world. Or maybe it was something darker, a voice in the back of my mind whispering that I could do better than an angry confrontation. I could make her pay. I put the phone back where I found it and went to bed. The next morning, I made her coffee, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I loved her. She smiled at me, a little too sweetly, and said, "You're the best, you know that." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. But instead, I smiled back and said, "I try." What she didn't know, what she could never have guessed, was that I had already decided how this was going to end. I wasn't going to just walk away, tail between my legs, like some clueless fool. No, I was going to take everything from her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. If she wanted to play dirty, she'd just declared war on the wrong man. The morning after my discovery, I felt oddly calm. Most people would expect rage, tears, or maybe even despair, but for me, it was something different. It was focus. I was already building the foundation of my plan, brick by brick, in my mind. Claire might have thought I was clueless, but what she didn't realize was that the years I spent building our life together had also prepared me to dismantle it, piece by piece, if necessary. And now, it was more than necessary, it was justice. The first thing I needed was proof. Text messages and photos were a good start, but they weren't enough. If I was going to take Claire down and protect myself, I needed an ironclad case. Evidence that no lawyer, no judge, and certainly no excuse she could muster would ever refute. I called an old college buddy of mine, Mike. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I knew he'd help me. Mike worked as a private investigator now, and while his rates weren't cheap, he owed me for covering his tuition one semester back when we were broke students. When I told him I needed to confirm an affair, he didn't ask questions. "Just send me her schedule, her photo, and any details you've got on the guy," he said. "Give me a week, and I'll get you what you need." While Mike got to work, I started laying the groundwork to protect my assets. Claire and I had a joint bank account, but what she didn't know was that I also had a private account in my name only. When we got married, I told her it was for emergencies, a safety net in case something ever happened to one of us. Over the years, I'd quietly funneled money into it, investing carefully and letting it grow. At first, it was just a precaution. Now, it was my lifeline. I began transferring money out of our joint account and into my private one, bit by bit, so it wouldn't raise any red flags. I also started selling off assets that were technically in my name but that Claire used regularly, her car, her high-end camera equipment, even some of the expensive furniture she'd picked out for her home studio. I listed the items online at fair prices, knowing I could move them quickly. I told the buyers to pick them up during the hours Claire was out of the house. By the time she realized they were missing, it would be far too late. Claire, blissfully unaware, continued her charade. She'd kiss me goodbye in the mornings, telling me she was heading to the studio to work on her latest project. She'd text me sweet little notes throughout the day, things like, "Can't wait to see you tonight." I didn't respond most of the time, I couldn't bring myself to fake it. But I didn't confront her either. Not yet. The longer she thought she had me fooled, the more reckless she'd get, and the more I could leverage that in my favor. About a week later, Mike called me. "You were right," he said, his voice grim. "She's been meeting this guy at hotels and bars. I've got photos, timestamps, and even some recordings of their conversations. You're going to want to see this. When Mike sent me the files, I thought I'd be prepared for what I was about to see. I wasn't. The photos showed Claire holding hands with Ryan, laughing with him, leaning into him like he was the center of her world. In one particularly damning image, they were kissing in the parking lot of a hotel. The timestamps matched the nights she'd told me she was working late. There was even an audio recording of her saying, "I can't wait to leave all this boring domestic crap behind. Ryan, you make me feel alive again." That line hit me harder than anything else. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late at the office, grinding to make sure we had everything we needed. All the times I put her dreams ahead of mine, telling her to take whatever time and resources she needed to pursue her art while I shouldered the financial burden. And now she wanted to leave me behind like a used-up tool. No. Not without consequences. With Mike's evidence in hand, I started phase 2 of my plan, preparing for the divorce. I contacted a divorce attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Linda who came highly recommended by one of my coworkers. Linda specialized in high-conflict cases, and when I laid out the situation for her, she nodded approvingly. "You've already done half my job for me," she said, flipping through the folder of evidence. "With this kind of proof, there's no way she gets alimony. If anything, you could go after her for damages." "That's not what I want," I said. "I don't care about making her pay me money. I just want to make sure she walks away with as little as possible. The house, the savings, the investments, they're all mine. I built them, and I'm not letting her take them after what she's done." Linda smirked. "I like the way you think. Let's make it happen." In the meantime, I continued to play the doting husband. I bought Claire flowers, made her favorite meals, and even suggested a romantic weekend getaway to reconnect. She seemed thrilled by the idea, probably thinking it was proof that I was still clueless. What she didn't realize was that I was buying time, keeping her calm while I finalized the details of my escape plan. But there was one more loose end to tie up: Ryan. I did some digging on him, starting with the bare-bones information I had from the messages I'd seen on Claire's phone. It didn't take long to find his social media profiles, and from there, I pieced together a decent picture of who he was. He was married, to a woman named Sarah. They had 2 kids, a dog, and the kind of Instagram-perfect life that Claire probably envied. The more I learned about him, the angrier I got. He wasn't just some bachelor playing the field, he was a married man destroying 2 families for his own selfish desires. I debated whether or not to tell Sarah. Part of me felt like it wasn't my place, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized she deserved to know. If I were in her shoes, I'd want someone to tell me. And, selfishly, I knew it would drive a wedge between Ryan and Claire if he had to deal with the fallout of his own lies. One evening, while Claire was out working late, I sat down at my computer and wrote Sarah a message. I kept it simple. "Hi Sarah. I'm reaching out because I believe my wife, Claire, has been having an affair with your husband, Ryan. I know this is a difficult thing to hear, and I'm truly sorry to bring this into your life, but I thought you should know the truth. Attached are some photos and screenshots that confirm their relationship. If you'd like to talk or need more information, feel free to contact me. Sincerely, Jack." I attached the evidence and hit send. Then I sat back and waited. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was an unknown number, but I already knew who it was. "Hello?" I answered. "Is this Jack?" a woman's voice asked, trembling. "Yes, it is. This is Sarah." I don't even know what to say. I just saw the email. She broke down into sobs, and I waited patiently for her to compose herself. When she did, her voice was firm, furious. "Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. I'm going to confront him as soon as he gets home." I'm sorry to have to tell you this, I said, and I meant it. But I thought you deserved to know. She thanked me again before hanging up. I knew, in that moment, that Ryan's little fantasy world was about to come crashing down, and Claire's would follow soon after. All the pieces were in motion. It was only a matter of time before everything fell apart, for her, not for me. Over the next few days, things began to unravel faster than even I had anticipated. It started with Claire. She was tense, distracted, and checking her phone constantly. At first, I couldn't figure out what had changed. She had no idea about the email I sent to Ryan's wife or that the walls were closing in around her. But it was clear something had thrown her off balance. Then it hit me, Ryan must have told her. Sarah must have confronted him, and like the coward he was, he panicked and ran straight to Claire. I almost laughed at the thought. They probably thought they could smooth things over, hide in their little fantasy world while keeping their secrets intact. They didn't realize I was miles ahead of them. One evening, Claire came home from one of her late-night work sessions earlier than usual. She didn't look like the confident, carefree woman who had been sneaking around behind my back. Instead, she looked frazzled, almost scared. "Hey," I said casually, pretending to scroll through my phone as she walked into the living room. "You're home early. Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just, long day at the studio. I'm exhausted." She sat down on the couch, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. She wasn't exhausted, she was nervous. I could tell. It was written all over her face. "You sure?" I pressed, keeping my tone light. "You seem a little off." Claire's eyes darted to me for a split second before she looked away. "I'm fine, Jack. Just tired." I didn't push it. I wanted her to stew in her own anxiety, to feel the walls closing in without knowing exactly why. The next morning, things got even better. I was at the office when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Sarah, just thought you'd like to know, Ryan and I had it out last night. He confessed everything. He's staying with a friend for now, but our marriage is over. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm filing for divorce." I stared at the message, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. I hadn't set out to destroy Sarah's life, but she deserved the truth, and now she had the power to take back control. I replied, "I'm so sorry you're going through this, but I'm glad you know the truth. If you need anything, let me know." Her response was quick. "Thank you. I'll be fine. But just so you know, Ryan said he told Claire everything. She's scared you're onto her." I smirked. So that was it. Ryan had thrown Claire under the bus to save his own skin. Typical. But the timing couldn't have been better. My plan was nearly complete, and Claire was playing right into my hands. That evening, I decided to take things up a notch. When Claire got home, I greeted her with a warm smile. "Hey, babe. I made dinner tonight, your favorite." She blinked, clearly startled by my cheerful tone. "Oh, thanks. That's sweet." We sat down at the dining table, and I could see her struggling to act normal. She kept sneaking glances at me, like she was trying to figure out if I knew something. I let her squirm for a while before casually dropping the bomb. "So, how's the studio been?" I asked, cutting into my steak. She looked up, confused by the question. "It's fine." "Why?" "Oh, no reason. Just curious. You've been spending a lot of time there lately." Her hand froze halfway to her mouth, the fork trembling slightly. "Well, yeah. I've been working on some new projects. You know that." "Right," I said, nodding. "It's just funny. I was talking to Mike the other day, remember him? From college? He's a private investigator now. Anyway, we got to talking about work, and he mentioned something interesting about how easy it is to track people these days. Like, with photos, timestamps, GPS data. Claire's face turned ghost white. She put her fork down slowly, her breathing uneven. "Why are you telling me this?" I leaned back in my chair, locking eyes with her. "No reason. Just thought it was interesting. You know, for someone who's been working so hard lately." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I could see the panic building behind her eyes, the gears turning as she tried to figure out what to say. "Jack," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is there something you're trying to say?" I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral. "Nope. Just making conversation." I watched her squirm for a few more seconds before standing up and clearing my plate. "Anyway, I'm heading to bed. Long day tomorrow. Good night, Claire." I didn't give her a chance to respond. I walked out of the dining room, leaving her sitting there, stunned and silent. The next morning, Claire was unusually attentive. She made me coffee, kissed me on the cheek, and told me to have a great day at work. It was so out of character for her lately that I almost laughed. It was obvious she was trying to distract me, to make me think everything was fine. But I wasn't falling for it. Later that day, Linda called with an update. "Good news," she said. "I've filed the divorce papers, and with the evidence you've provided, it's going to be hard for her to fight back. We're going for a no alimony settlement, full rights to the house, and the majority of the assets. It's aggressive, but given the circumstances, I think it's fair." "That's exactly what I want," I said. "When can we serve her?" "As soon as you're ready," Linda replied. I smiled. "Let's do it." That evening, I got home to find Claire sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked up at me as I walked in, her eyes red and puffy. "Jack," she said softly, "can we talk?" I set my bag down and crossed my arms, leaning against the doorway. "Sure. What's up?" She hesitated, wringing her hands nervously. "I feel like there's been a distance between us lately. I don't know if it's me, or if it's you, but I just want to fix things. I want us to go back to the way we were." It was a good performance, I'd give her that. But I wasn't buying it. "That's funny," I said, my voice calm and even. "Because I feel like you've been pretty distant yourself. Late nights, secret phone calls, unexplained charges on the credit card. Sound familiar?" Her face crumpled. "Jack, I can explain." "Don't bother," I interrupted. "I know everything, Claire. I know about Ryan, about the hotels, about the lies. I've known for weeks." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Save it," I snapped. "I don't care about your excuses. I cared about us. I cared about the life we built together. And you threw it all away for what? Some guy who's already destroyed his own family." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. "I've already filed for divorce," I said, my voice cold. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Oh, and just so you know, you're not getting the house. Or the savings. Or anything else I worked for. You made your choices, Claire. Now you get to live with them." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't stick around to listen. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her to wallow in the mess she'd made of her life. It was over, or at least, it would be soon. All that was left was to watch the pieces fall where they may. After my confrontation with Claire, things moved quickly. Linda wasted no time serving her the divorce papers, and the look on Claire's face when she opened them was a mixture of shock, heartbreak, and something else, desperation. She tried to talk to me again, pleading, crying, begging for a second chance, but I was resolute. I had done my grieving in silence, in those long nights when I sat with the weight of her betrayal crushing me. Now, I was done feeling sorry. My focus was on moving forward. But Claire didn't seem to share my clarity. Over the next few days, she became increasingly erratic. She would disappear for hours at a time, her phone constantly buzzing with calls and texts she ignored in front of me. The same woman who once carried herself with carefree confidence now looked like a shadow of herself, disheveled, nervous, almost haunted. At first, I thought it was just guilt or the realization that her fantasy life was collapsing. But as the days stretched on, I began to feel uneasy. Something wasn't right. One night, about 2 weeks after I served her the papers, I came home to find the house eerily quiet. Claire was usually in the living room or her studio, trying to keep up the facade of normalcy despite everything, but tonight, the lights were dim, and the air felt heavy. "Claire." I called out, dropping my keys on the counter. There was no answer. I walked through the house, checking each room, my unease growing with every empty space. When I reached the bedroom, I stopped. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, I could hear the faintest sound, like muffled sobbing. I pushed the door open, and my breath caught in my throat. Claire was sitting on the bed, her face streaked with tears. In her lap was a photo album, the one we'd made together after our honeymoon. She was holding it so tightly her knuckles were white, but that wasn't what froze me in place. It was the sight of an open pill bottle on the nightstand, next to an empty glass of water. "Claire." I rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders, shaking her. Her head lolled to the side, her eyes half open but unfocused. "What did you do?" I shouted, my voice cracking with panic. I shook her again, harder this time. "Claire, wake up." Her lips parted, and she mumbled something I couldn't make out. I grabbed the pill bottle and scanned the label. It was a prescription for anti-anxiety medication, but the bottle was empty. My heart raced as I tried to remember how many pills had been in there before. 20. 30. More. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. As I waited for the operator, I kept talking to Claire, trying to keep her conscious. "Why, Claire? Why would you do this?" My voice was shaking, my chest tight with a mix of fear and anger. "You don't get to take the easy way out. You don't get to leave me to clean up your mess." Her eyes fluttered, and she murmured something again. I leaned in closer, desperate to hear her. "I didn't mean for it to go like this," she whispered, her words slurred. "I was just so tired, Jack. So tired." By the time the paramedics arrived, Claire was barely breathing. They rushed her to the hospital, and I followed in my car, my mind racing with every worst-case scenario imaginable. How did it come to this? How did we go from being the couple everyone envied to this? The next several hours were a blur. The doctors pumped her stomach and hooked her up to machines, and all I could do was sit in the waiting room, staring at the floor. The anger I'd been carrying for weeks was gone, replaced by something else, an ache so deep it felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted justice. But I never wanted this. Finally, a doctor came out to speak to me. Her expression was grim, and my heart sank before she even said a word. "She's stable for now," the doctor said, her tone careful, measured. But it was a close call. She took a dangerous amount of medication. If you hadn't found her when you did, it could have been fatal. I felt a rush of relief, but it was fleeting. The doctor wasn't finished. "That said, I think it's important we talk about her mental health. This wasn't an accident, Jack. Based on what she said when she came to, and the state she was in when she arrived, it's clear that Claire was attempting to take her own life." The words hit me like a physical blow. I nodded, unable to speak, as the doctor continued. "I'd recommend admitting her for a psychiatric evaluation and treatment. She's clearly in a lot of emotional pain, and she needs help. I thanked the doctor numbly and sat back down, my head in my hands. The relief I'd felt moments earlier was gone, replaced by a crushing sense of guilt. I had wanted to destroy Claire, and I'd succeeded. I had taken everything from her, her security, her stability, her future. And now, I had to face the possibility that I might have taken her will to live as well. Over the next few days, Claire was kept under observation in the hospital. I visited her, though I wasn't sure why. She was awake but distant, her once bright eyes now dull and hollow. She didn't speak much, and when she did, it was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she said one day, her voice trembling. "For everything. For what I did to you, to us. I don't even know who I am anymore." I didn't know what to say. Part of me still wanted to hate her, to hold on to the anger that had fueled me for so long. But sitting there, watching her fall apart, I couldn't. All I could feel was sadness, over what we'd lost, over the people we used to be, over the wreckage we'd both created. "Claire," I said finally, my voice soft. "You need to focus on getting better. That's all that matters right now." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Do you think you could ever forgive me?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that we could somehow fix what was broken. But I couldn't lie to her. I didn't know if forgiveness was possible. All I knew was that the life we had built together was gone, and no amount of apologies or regrets could bring it back. A week later, Claire was discharged from the hospital and admitted to a mental health facility for further treatment. I filed the final paperwork for the divorce, but it didn't feel like a victory anymore. It felt hollow, empty, like I had won a game I never wanted to play in the first place. I moved out of the house shortly after that, unable to stay in the place that held so many memories of a life that no longer existed. Claire stayed in the facility for months, and though we didn't speak often, I heard from mutual friends that she was slowly starting to heal. I was glad for her, in a distant, bittersweet way. As for me, I tried to move on, but the weight of it all stayed with me. The anger, the betrayal, the revenge, it had all led to this, a hollow sense of triumph overshadowed by tragedy. I had set out to destroy Claire, but in the process, I had destroyed something in myself as well. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear her words in my head, "I didn't mean for it to go like this. I was just so tired." And I wonder if, in trying to teach her a lesson, I had forgotten the humanity behind the betrayal. If, in my quest for justice, I had lost sight of what it really means to forgive, to heal, to let go. It wasn't just Claire who needed saving. It was both of us. But by the time I realized that, it was already too late.